let's talk about all of the beautiful patterns that have just been released in August. Well, maybe not all of them, because I think it would actually take days to cover them all. Instead, I have created a bundle on Ravelry where I grouped together more than 100 patterns that stood out to me the most. I'm going to link it for you in the description box. And in this video, I am going to show you 10 of these patterns. Let's get started. By the way, if we haven't met before, my name is Annika and I am coming to you from Germany. I am a natural yarn dyer and a lover of all things fiber arts. So the first pattern, and one that I absolutely adore, is called the Long Forever Cardigan by Marte. I'm not even going to try to say this name because I have no idea how to pronounce it. It is a Norwegian name and I'm going to put up everything for you on the screen. So this is a very, very lovely cardigan that is knitted holding together two strands of mohair, which creates this fluffy, cute look. I think it looks very elegant and romantic with these large puffy sleeves. The cardigan is knitted top down. It includes some German short rows and there are raglan increases. The size ranges from a extra small to a 2XL with a gauge of 20 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And she uses a needle size 4mm, which corresponds to a US 6. I was really mesmerized when I saw this pattern. It stood out to me immediately. I think it's absolutely gorgeous and I would love to make it. Next up is another romantic looking cardigan, which is called the Fabels Islender, I think, by Fabel Knitwear, which is Helene Arnesen. So this is, like I said, another romantic cardigan. It even looks a bit vintage to me and also has those puffy sleeves. And in the pattern description, the designer says that she was inspired by the 1930s and 40s silhouettes with this fitted body and the elegant puffy shoulders. The design is worked top down and features an all-over stranded color work. The yarn she used is from her own yarn line called Fabel Knitwear, and the base is Elder, which is a DK weight yarn out of a 100% merino fiber. The gauge is 17.5 stitches per 10 centimeter or 4 inches, and the cardigan is knitted in a 4.5 and 5mm needle, which correspond to a US 7 and a US 8, and the design comes in 7 different sizes. The next design that really stood out to me is called McGregor, and it is this beautiful comfy sweater design by Martha Wissing. It is not as fitted, in fact it is quite relaxed and oversized, but it looks just so comfy to me. And as you can see on the picture, I really like the fact that it comes with 2 different sleeve options, which you can see here. So you can either decide to do an open sleeve or a cuffed sleeve. And the designer describes the pattern as an oversized comfy sweater that is knitted seamlessly from the top down. It features some deep raglan shaping and a very simple knit pearl texture. The yarn she used is the Barocco Ultra Alpaca, which is a 50-50 blend of alpaca and wool. I also really like this deep green color that she chose. It looks so fall appropriate in my opinion, and it's just a perfect fit for the pattern. The gauge is 20 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeter or 4 inches. And the needle sizes used are a 4 and 5mm needle, which correspond to a US 6 and a US 8. The only downside of this pattern is the fact that it comes only in one size, but I think due to the oversized fit, it might probably fit a number of different sizes, but of course that really is a downside. Let's have a look at a completely different design. So this is a very cute summer top called the Lilli Camisole by Mabel Knitting, who is Marie. Another very feminine romantic pattern with a cute all over lace motif. that is knitted in Sandnes Garn Tin Line. This is a light fingering yarn and a blend of cotton, linen and rayon. The gauge is 29 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle sizes used are a 2.5 and a 2 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 1.5 and a US 0. The camisole is knitted seamlessly from the top down, and you knit the left and right front part separately and later on join. The straps are done in double knitting to be extra sturdy, and she also includes some optional waist shaping. Although we are already towards the end of summer now, I think this is a very beautiful pattern that you could probably knit up rather quickly if you chose to make it. I think it is very beautiful and it is for sure on my to knit list for next year. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the pattern comes in 8 different sizes. Next up is another summer top, and it is called the Bliss Tank by Alicia Plummer. This is a very classic, simple design, which is actually available for free, which I think is just absolutely awesome. I really like Alicia Plummer. She's quite a popular designer, but I really like her design aesthetic, and I have knitted several of her patterns before. In fact, I've been a test knitter for 2 of her patterns. I tested the Garnet Cardi, which was an all-over lace cardigan, and I also knitted the CQ sweater. The yarn she uses is a sport weight yarn, which is a cashmere merino blend with a gauge of 16 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a 5.5 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 9. The pattern comes in 17 different sizes. The pattern is intended to be worn with a bit of negative ease. She recommends 1 to 3 inches, which corresponds to 2.5 to 7.5 centimeters. The front and back are knitted flat and then later on joined at the shoulders with a 3 needle bind off, and then the sides are seamed. There's also a slight A-line shape to the body, which still makes it possible to tuck it in at the front if you wish to do so. She also wrote the pattern to help spread the word about the Size Inclusive Collective, which is a resource to help promote grading advocacy in the knitting industry so that everybody, no matter their shape or body size, can have access to well-written and great fitting knitting patterns. I think this is a very beautiful pattern. I already have it in my library and I'm looking forward to hopefully knitting it next year. Next up is the umma top by Agio Knit, who is Caroline. The pattern is, as of right now, only available in Danish and Norwegian, but they are already working on translating it into English, and it even says on the pattern page that it will be released in an English version very shortly. Now, Agio Knit is another popular designer, and with this type of video, I always aim to feature smaller designers that you might have not heard of before, but this pattern was just too beautiful not to include it. If you watch the Fruity Knitting podcast, you might have seen Caroline in their summer episode that just came out a couple of weeks ago. If you have not seen it before, I definitely recommend that you go and have a look, because I personally always really like to see the designer show their designs in person and talk a bit more about the story of their inspiration and their brand in general. And I think it's a very lovely way of connecting with the designer on a more personal level. Now, the umma top is sleeveless and has a very unusual construction. It is worked top down and knitted flat. It is an all-over garter stitch and has this asymmetrical shape. Comes in 6 different sizes. In the sample, she holds 2 yarns together. She combines a sport weight yarn with a lace weight yarn. The yarns that she uses are the Isaiah yarn Marilyn, which is a wool linen blend, and the Isaiah yarn Trio 1, which is a linen cotton blend. And this results in a gauge of 22 stitches and 38 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle sizes used are a 3.5 and a 3 millimeter needle, which correspond to a US 4 and a US 2.5. Another awesome design that I would love to make. We'll see when I get around to actually knitting it. Another top that really stood out to me is the Zante top by Nono Green. Another romantic design with a deep V, and I also really like those ruffles at the armholes. The top is knitted in all over stockinette stitch, and those wavy ruffly edges are later on added by crocheting. So in order to make this pattern, you not only have to know how to knit, but also how to crochet. The yarn that she uses in her sample is a blend of cotton and acrylic, which I definitely would swap out for a all-natural fiber. It is a sport weight yarn which has a gauge of 16 stitches and 23 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size she uses is a 4.5 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 7, and the pattern comes in 5 different sizes. Let's move on to accessories now. These mittens are very lovely in my opinion. They are called Bordot in green and white, and the designer is Anita Vidal. She has a number of different colorwork mitten patterns, so you should definitely check out her shop. The yarn that she used for those mittens is a fingering weight yarn, which is a blend of alpaca and wool. The gauge is 32 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size she used is a 2.5 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 1.5. The only downside about this pattern is the fact that it comes in only one size to fit a female hand. But I think since she used a fingering weight yarn, it would be very easy to adapt it and make it a bit larger. So if you would choose a thicker yarn with a different gauge, you would get a larger mitten if you would cast on the same number of stitches that she did. I hope I didn't confuse you now. If you are not sure how to modify knitting patterns to fit different sizes or different yarn weights, I have filmed a whole video all about that, showing you different examples, which you can find here. Let's move on to the next pattern, which is the Campfire Stories Shawl by Timber and Threads, who is Kendra. Now this is a crochet pattern, so you do have to know how to crochet in order to make this beautiful stripy shawl. The sample is knitted in a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 16 stitches and 16 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And she uses a 4 millimeter hook, which corresponds to a size G. The Campfire Stories shawl comes in 3 different sizes, which is quite nice and has an asymmetrical triangle shape. Personally, I like everything that has stripes. I think it looks always very classic and elegant, and this is for sure a shawl that I would love to make. I was also really drawn to the inspiration that the designer put on the Ravelry page in the description box, so I'm going to read that to you now. She says that the shawl was inspired by cool evenings by a crackling campfire underneath the moonlit sky, telling stories, making memories while wrapped in a cozy shawl. She also writes in the pattern description that the shawl uses only 3 very basic stitches, so you could make it even if you are a crochet beginner. So we'll see if I get around to making it, but I think this is a very stunning design. And the last pattern that I wanted to show you are these socks. They are called the Calypso Socks, and the designer is Göce, I think. It is a Turkish name. I'm not sure how to say it. I hope that was right. The socks feature this beautiful all over cable pattern, but she specifically states in the description that you do not need to use a cable needle, which is always a good thing. The socks are knitted cuff down and have a short row heel. They are knitted in a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 42 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And she uses a 2.5 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 1.5. Unfortunately, this pattern also only comes in one size, but similar to what was that, the mittens. I think if you would use a thicker sock yarn, so a DK weight sock yarn or maybe a sport weight sock yarn, you could size up if you needed to. And what you could also do, depending on the amount of stitches that are in the repeat of the cable pattern, that you could simply add several repeats or take them out, depending on, like I said, how long the repeat is and how many stitches you would need to fit your foot. Now, August was a month in which a lot of beautiful patterns have been released. And besides the 10 that I just showed you, there were a lot of popular designers that also released patterns that I didn't show you, but I wanted to mention just a few. So there were releases of Caitlin Hunter, The Petite Knitter, Isabel Krämer, Lene Holme-Samsø, Veronika Lindberg, Sari Nordland. All of them released beautiful designs, but in this video, I like to feature designers that are maybe a bit less known than those really popular names. I mean, of course, Alicia Plummer and Aegionit are also very well-known designers, but overall, I try to pick patterns that you might have not seen before. So what do you think? Are you going to cast on any of these patterns soon? Please leave a comment and let me know. And if you would like to know what I'm currently knitting on, you should have a look at my knitting podcast here. Until next time, bye guys!